What's up, guys? Lucky Locks here. Welcome back to another prediction video. And welcome back after quite a long time because it has been a little while since I've done one of these. You guys know how it goes. Things get busy. Life happens. But yeah, man, I guess I missed it because I'm back doing another LFA prediction today. And hopefully, I can start getting these out for all the cards like I used to do back in the day. And as always, without further ado, let's get right into the fights. The first fight on the main card is Lee versus Guerrero. And Lee is 5-0. He is fighting out of Minnesota, so a bit of a home game for him here. He had a lot of amateur experience. And, so far his pro career is going great, right? 5-0. Should have a length advantage here. I think a decently significant length advantage. I think Sal Guerrero's reach is around 64.5 inches, something like that. And I think Lee has about 70 inches of reach. And so that's going to play into his ability to land strikes at range. And also he can grapple. He showed that off in his last fight. Sal Guerrero, on the other hand, is a guy from Florida. He's an American top team guy and has a lot of experience on the Florida circuit regionally on shows like Titan FC. He is 3-2 in his last 5 fights. And, he lost to good competition. His wins, though, generally over poor competition. And I think Lee seems to be somewhere in the middle on this scale, in the sense that I don't think anyone Guerrero has beat is better than Lee, but I also think the two guys that he's lost to in recent memory would give Lee trouble. Lee is technical. It doesn't look to be tremendously athletic, though, and I think Guerrero is actually the more athletically gifted fighter here, and I think that could go a little bit of ways to mitigate some of the length discrepancy here. Guerrero probably looks to get inside and grapple here and make it ugly. I think there's a path for him there. I think he's a strong guy. I think he's determined. And I think this is close to a 50-50 fight, so I'd side with the plus money on this one. Lee opened up at minus 400. That's crazy. I definitely wish I had some Sal tickets at those numbers, and it's come in quite a bit now, around like minus 130-ish on the Lee side, and about even money come back on the underdog. So it's probably a pass now, but if I had to pick a side for the purpose of the show, I think I'm going to side with the underdog in this opening fight. Next fight up here, we got Ho versus Latchman. Antoine Ho is a 4-0 fighter fighting out of the MMA lab in Arizona. Very good gym, great room to be in, and he's just shy of 23 years old right now. So a very exciting prospect, no doubt. I think he is the better of these two Vietnamese fighters on this card tonight. He also has a significantly easier matchup between the two of them, right? So he's a very active fighter. This is going to be his 3rd fight of the year right here. He's really making a push to get noticed by, the major promotions, that next level of the sport. And he's coming up against Kendrick Latchman, who is a 9-9 fighter. He's 1-4 in his last 5, so, he's experienced, right? We can say that. He's gone with pretty good guys. But I doubt he's going to win this fight, man. I think there's a reason why Ho is like a minus 700 favorite here. I'm not saying run to the window and bet that, but I do think he wins this one. I think he wins it inside the distance. Third fight up on the main card, we have Huckbody versus Fallon. And Huckbody is a wrestler from Minnesota. I think he splits time training at home in Minnesota and at the MMA lab in Arizona, like we just talked about in the previous fight. Very good gym. So he showed up in 2020 on Dana White's Contender Series Season 4 as a 7-2 fighter. He got a triangle in the first round on the show, and Dana offered him the contract. He said he couldn't have looked more impressive, offered him the contract. Huckbody ended up declining that contract, I believe citing that he's feeling burnt out, or I can't remember the exact reason, but he ended up declining it, wanted to do more work on the regionals, I guess. I don't know how great of a decision that was. Immediately after, it appeared to be, his bet on himself was paying off because he won the CFFC middleweight belt 4 months after that. But then he lost it in his next fight to Aaron Jeffrey. He is 3-2 in his last 5 fights, and he's had some high moments and some low moments there. One of the losses was to Johnny Eblen, so that's really no issue. We're not going to hold that one against him. And he did beat Joel Bauman, and that's a great win. But last time out, he did lose his last fight. It wasn't a great performance, in my opinion. He's up against Fallon here, who's an experienced regional vet from Indiana. He is 3-2 over his last 5. Lost a split decision to Adam Asenzo over that span. And then he won 3 straight fights on the regionals, but then he lost his last one on a cut stoppage to a very tough opponent on Bellator, undefeated 25-year-old Dagestani fighter. And Fallon has a ton of subs on his resume, so there are probably going to be scrambles here, and Huckbody's definitely going to need to stay safe. But I do think he can do it. Personally, I don't want to be anywhere near a minus 300 on Huckbody, but I do think that he gets this one done, and I think he gets back on track here. Next up, we got Keegan Genrich coming up against Donald Bush. And Genrich is a Minnesota native here, and he is a big lightweight. He is 4-1 over his last 5 fights. He won a split decision over Richie Miranda in his last fight and finished Jake Kozarowski before that. He's a good grappler. I believe he's the co-owner of his own gym. And Donald Bush is fighting out of Florida. He is 3-2 in his last 5. Was on a 3-year hiatus and then came back last year. Has fought 3 times since then. Lost to Jonas Flock and then won 2 straight. Those wins definitely not against household names, but he looked pretty good in the wins, and I do believe he's training at American top teams, so great room to be in. With all that said, I'm just not convinced that's going to be enough to beat Genrich here. I think there's going to be scrappy moments for sure. There's going to be competitive scrambles. I just think that Genrich is going to take this one. I think he's a little bit better. He's the hometown guy here, and I think his grappling is going to be good enough to secure him this victory, but should be a fun fight. Now we have a really good fight in the co-main event of this card between Bobby Lee and Lucas Clay. So this is at 160 pounds, I think. Is that a catch weight here? Both of these guys are lightweights. Bobby Lee, not the comedian. Bobby Lee, the regional fighter. He is from Minnesota, and he's a very experienced regional guy. If you watch regional MMA, you've seen this guy around. He paid his dues on the regionals and joined Bellator at the end of 2020. But since then, he's been on a bit of a rough run. He's 1-4 over his last 5. He went 0-3 in his Bellator stint, losing to Joey Davis, Soren Back, and Nick Brown. And those are all good fighters, so it's not, we're not going to hugely hold that against him here. He did beat Gage Young on FAC, and that's a good win. That's a good fighter. Lost to Arthur Estruzoulis in his last fight. That came on LFA. And that was a fight he was seemingly winning until he ended up getting caught in a choke. And, the issue is that just seems to kind of be becoming a common theme in his career a little bit. Half of his losses have come by submission. Estruzoulis got him with the triangle, Nick Brown with the heel hook. He was guillotined by DeMarcus Jackson and Kelis Mota. And Lucas Clay is a very good grappler, so that obviously is going to set off some alarm bells here if you are on the Bobby Lee side. Lucas Clay is a very good grappler. He's a big lightweight. He's very long, and he's going to have a significant reach advantage in this fight, representing a good gym in St. Charles MMA. He is 4-1 over his last 5 with 2 submissions, 1 knockout, and a decision. And the loss was a split decision in the LFA lightweight title fight, which he arguably won. That fight came against Aaron McKenzie. It was a very good fight, very competitive, very close. And I think that the winner of this fight versus Jacoby Jones for the title next makes sense. Jacoby Jones obviously just competed on Dana White's Contender Series, didn't end up getting the win. So I think that him versus the winner of this fight would make sense for the LFA lightweight belt next. I don't really want to line up on the other side of the Minnesota boy here, but I think Lucas Clay takes this one. I think Lucas Clay is going to take this one by submission. Now we've arrived at a very good main event for this card between Mitchell McKee and Sean McPadden. 2 Minnesotans meet in the main event here. McKee is 4-0 with 4 knockouts. He is 3-0 on LFA, his other win coming on Bellator. And he was an All-American wrestler for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. He was also a junior national champ in freestyle. And he's now training at Kill Cliff MMA. McPadden is training in Minnesota, I believe. He is a 6-1 pro, 4-1 on LFA, and he's coming off a great win over Michael Sear. He's finished all 6 of his wins, so 2 great prospects here to cap off a stat card. Both of these guys are finishers. I'm not sure I see this one going 3 rounds, with the resume and the pedigree that both of these guys are boasting here. McPadden definitely has more MMA experience, right? He was an amateur champion before turning pro. He has a better resume thus far, straight up. He just has better wins, fought better level of competition, and he's a guy that came up in MMA. He's a few years older, whereas McKee is making that transition from wrestling. But, it's been a very successful transition thus far, and I think having that elite wrestling base that, he just came with right out of the box, pair that with being in the room at Killcliff, I think that's going to help McKee kind of bridge the gap in experience here. I do think this is a close fight. And, McKee out to -400, let's be honest, that's wide, right? I don't think he's 80% implied here. I think it's definitely closer than the line indicates, but I still think, McKee's going to get this one done. I think betting-wise, probably if you want to bet the money line here, you probably do have to take the McPadden side just because the line seems pretty wide, but I think McKee is a more gifted athlete. I think he's, training in perhaps the highest level room out there right now. I think he's going to be making big improvements. So I'm going to side with Mitchell McKee here, but definitely a close fight. Very excited to see the way this one plays out. And, the winner here definitely in line for a look at the next level. Definitely in line for, a shot at the title in LFA. So big implications on the line in this main event between two guys from Minnesota in Minnesota. This should be a good one. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it, as always, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.